Yo, what is good everybody? Welcome along to yet another DnB tutorial on the channel. And today's another breakdown video of a kit from my brand new DnB pack, Equilibrium, out now, link in the description. And I decided for this one to cover the very Pendulum-y inspired kit from the pack. So yeah, I'm gonna dive through composition, sound design, audio processing, layering, and all that other good stuff. This is what it sounds like. So yeah, we're going to be diving into everything that makes up that. Inside we have drums, bass, guitar, lead, and a couple of effects layers. So yeah, let's start with the kick. As you can see, a lot of EQ. Conventionally, I wouldn't use that much EQ, but I felt like it needed it in this kick. A little bit too boomy, too boxy. And all this EQ and soothe is literally to get just a little bit of a tighter sound and a little less bass for the kick. Yeah, super like low end kick, probably not suited for this style of DnB. And yeah, moving on. Snare time, made the sample mono. I don't know how stereo it was before, and just a little bit of shaping so it's got like no low end. And then a bit more shaping to reduce the fundamental doof. A little bit clearer in the mix, and then a little bit of compression over the top. And when I say a little bit, a lot. Smacks through so much harder, compression with like a slow attack and a quick release, key for getting punchier drum sounds, or just any sounds really. They don't have super dominant frequencies, like I said before, the kick hasn't got like a huge amount of low end and the snare hasn't got a huge amount of sound. Snare roll. Classic DnB break, just a little shuffle in the background. And a break over the top. Mostly made up of hi-hats, and of course no low end as well, because we want the low end for literally everything else. Mainly the bass and sub bass, and guitar kind of low mids as well. So there's like the top break, and then what's left is to add a bit more cymbals to kind of flesh out the high end. One doing eighths, one on every beat. And then a tiny little shuffle in there. And just like the break before, no low end whatsoever. Strip that out with the EQ. These drum sounds, of course, all go into a group, and then like it's sounding decent, but it needs the punch and smack to it. So of course, Isotope trash. Simple, literally stage 1 drive, double stages. I don't even think I tweaked these parameters. I literally found a cool kind of trash module to use. Raise the volume, add a little bit more sizzle. Convolution reverb. Of course, since it's a very quick decay in size and no low end whatsoever, and a very, very low dry wet, there's barely any reverb on it. It's just to literally kind of glue the drums together, put them in the same space, even if it is like 3%. So put them in the same kind of like room or environment. And of course, more compression. Like I said before, if you want the punchy drum sound, you go slow attack and fast release. Provides a little bit more punch, and I decided to have a little bit more kick and snare come through that, so a little bit of EQ boost right there. Not that it's doing much for the snare, but it's definitely doing stuff for the kick. And that is the drum sound. Didn't do any fills or any other random shenanigans apart from like muting the kick on the second section. I don't know, it's a classic thing to like drop the kick out of the first kind of beat, and it sounds cool. It's like, wait, where'd it go? And it's back in. And that is mainly the drums right there. Super tight kick and snare sound with a lot of EQ to kind of shape it and make it less boomy and boxy. Then just chuck cymbals over that. Smash it all together in a group with, you don't have to use trash obviously, with distortion, tiny bit of reverb and compression. Glued the whole thing together. Obviously the volume is quite low, but it's actually, it's not gluing. And you can hear the break kind of come through. Yeah. Distortion, compression, key. Bass layer. As you can see, a couple of multi-band dynamics doing some sidechain. We'll get onto that very soon. Operator bass. Super straightforward, locked into key. You're going to see a lot of that. But literally sine wave, and then bump up the level on the second oscillator. And what I have match at before. 33 just to introduce the pitch, gives a little bit more punch. Classic overdrive, do this on all my subs. It's just the stock standard overdrive, but click, hold, drag, make it as lowest value, and then it gives the sub a bit more juice and harmonics and whatever. And obviously it was a little bit too loud in that bit, so EQ notch to kind of cut that out. And that's the sub, nice and easy. So the sub is occupying the low sub frequencies. I wanted like a mid layer with super wide as well, so saw wave with a lot of unison. I don't know why I added this. A little bit more character to the sound, no effects whatsoever. And of course the sub is reserved for the sub bass, so no low end there. And with Trash 2 I used the multiband feature, so kind of like multiband distortion here. Didn't use anything on the sub and the high end, mostly just the mids to kind of distort it, make it a bit more fuller, and it does a little bit of something. So you can have subtle difference there. Lastly, another operator, a little bit more character to the bass. This was saw 32, sine wave, course 9, level up a bit. And a lot of pitch. This is definitely adding to the punch of the bass. Somehow the bass is punch. It is what it is. And of course a little bit of OTT. More trash, baby. Bit of saturation there. And of course no low end because sub, yep. And a bit more shaping and a little micro shift to make it slightly wider. So the bass isn't entirely mono, but we probably didn't even need to use that because this serum is very wide. And what I mentioned before, which I was going to talk about, is multiband dynamics. Sidechain from the kick and sidechain from the snare. The kick sidechain focuses more on the low end to duck that out when the kick is happening, and the snare is more like a mid-range duck. You get a bit more clarity in your mixes as opposed to using just like a normal compressor sidechain from whatever. This is going to compress your overall sound. This is going to compress certain bands of frequencies so you can focus it towards the low end but still have like high end playing. So the high end's completely getting through. You don't need a sidechain that because the kick and snare is mostly just kick, low end, snare, mids. So we're going to focus on compressing the bass when that happens. And without, probably could have gone away with it to be fair, but it just needs to be a little bit more tighter of a mix. Next layer is a massive Arp Lead. Not a low end. Nice and easy square wave with an LFO on the pitch, doing some craziness. So it's kind of modulating between 1 octave and 12 semitones higher, which is another octave. Classic kind of pendulum sound. Guitar, I did quite a few layers to get like a wide guitar sound. Notice the multiband sidechain once again. So we'll go through the layers. Use guitar rig to get the distortion sound I wanted. I think this was like a metal preset or something, very straightforward and simple. Panned hard left. And then a duplicate of that panned hard right to make it extra wide. Classic kind of rock or metal mix down, just to have like one guitar on one side, one guitar on the other. Pretty sure this will be the same preset. As opposed to, where's the fun of that? And a little bit of sculpting with the EQ. Next layer, imitating the lead. 2 octaves. Same guitar rig preset. A lot of OTT, hence why you can hear the noise in the background just being lifted. No bass, even more distortion, and then Stu to round it out because it was quite a big problematic range around there. So combined with the chugging power chords and the lead, makes a pretty fat guitar layer, and this is just another extra lead for the last section. Hence why the leads turned down quite a bit. It didn't really need to be added in this mix down, to be fair, but more layers the better. It's going to sound even fuller, and you can just turn them down if they're way too loud or if it's too clashy. And moving on to the main leads. Now the main preset for this lead is actually from a previous pack, so I'm not going to dive into it too much. But if you have purchased Matrix from our site, when it had the limited edition Serum bonus pack, you'll have this preset. So yeah, I'm not going to dive into it too much, but there's a bit of LFO trickery involved. Cheeky little glide note instead of just add a little bit of spice, and notice some quick notes here as well. And of course, absolutely no low end, it's just lead, it needs to be that high end. It's just muddy. Second lead. Very simple sound, BS2 acid wavetable, no unison. The only modulation that's happening is on the high pass filter. It's just tweaking it slightly. Distortion, OTT, and EQ to round off the low end. Now there is a lot of effects processing on this, I'll play it without. Mostly just shape it. First up, saturated bass, it just gives it, not necessarily distortion, but it just messes with it. A little bit of spice there. EQ, once again, no low end. Sometimes with like distortion plugins, like Saturator or Trash or other ones, it'll actually bring up the low end as it creates noise and whatnot. I try to always chuck an EQ after distortion plugins to kind of just like cap that low end. A little bit of reverb, of course. Some compression to add a little bit more punch. A little bit of weirdness, but I'll try to break it down. There's a much easier way to do this in hindsight, and that's just using like an auto pan with settings like this, and then bringing the amount up like that. But no, I had to make things way more complicated than it need to be. Have an LFO tool. The LFO tool is mapped to this gain right here. So the LFO shape is down, so it's kind of creating that jagged sound. And like I said, it's mapped to this gain here. So the gain is following that LFO and doing the jagged sound. But the key thing is this macro, which introduces the depth to increase the intensity of this LFO tool. So some sections it's not playing anything, like the start, which we don't want it to, and then up the macro, and it's going to up the depth and trigger the LFO tool to make this gain move. But when doing that, the volume was all over the place, so I also had to map the macro to turn down the gain here. Just super subtly, because it's just a little bit too loud. And yeah, like I said, way easy way to do that is auto pan, but I had to make things way too complicated. Then limiter, and of course some multi-band sidechain from the kick and snare, and soothe to round off. All the aggressive frequencies, which there were quite a few. So why is the LFO tool just involved? Well, if you hit it without, just not that flavorsome. And that is the lead. Effects, a couple of saw waves, 1 octave up, distortion, OTT, chorus to make it wide, and then some very aggressive EQ. And then second layer is preset, which never made it into a pack. It's just, yeah, I don't know, it's a little bit strange, but it was fitting for the effects layer. And like I said, lots of EQ there. So all in all, drums, bass, guitar, lead, and a couple of effects layers. And that is the kit called Drive Breakdown. Hopefully you guys did learn a thing or two. And the DMB Track from Scratch series will be starting very soon. It will be the next upload on this channel, so stay tuned for that. It's gonna be good time. Can't wait to start. Alright, see you guys then. Peace.